Hey, so here we are with a session from Marty Grimes that I actually mixed, I think 4 or 5 years ago. It's called Do the Most. Maybe not that long ago, maybe just a couple years ago. But this one's already out. You can check it out. It's Marty Grimes, Do the Most. Great record, mixed and mastered this one. I'm going to show you in this module how to get vocals to be deep and spacious if you're making like a trap record with a nice melodic hook, or really any vocal. It does not matter. So I wanted to show you with real live sessions that I've worked on in the past and give you different versions of this stuff because we're focusing on the Waves Gold bundle and mixing on a budget. So for $10 a month, you can have this whole package of incredible plugins, like so powerful. I can't believe that it's $10 a month. And honestly, I would just buy the whole package because usually you can get it for like 150 to 200 bucks because it's usually on sale. And you get a discount code. So with this whole package. So this one I'm going to show you in Pro Tools. So whether you use Pro Tools or not, if you use Ableton, Logic, it's going to work in any DAW the same exact way. Just please understand the fundamentals to what I'm about to show you. So let's listen to the song and let's listen to a little clip of coming into the hook and kind of the melodic trap hook that he's got here. And I'll just play like a little bit of the verse leading in.
Quiet as scissors, I scoring and cut. Life is so good at performing as fuck. You know, fucking the phone. You know when I do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, fuck, we gon' post some. Soon as I get the jet, you know we gon' blow some. You know when I do it, bitch, I do the most.
Okay, so I like the vocal. There's actually a plugin missing on this that I had before for the final mix, which is this 2016 stereo room from Eventide. But that doesn't matter because what we're going to do here is we are going to clear all of the plugins here. Okay, so we're just going to get rid of everything we got here. So I have an Arouser compressor from Imperial Labs and an E606 from McDSP, which is a cool EQ, but I don't want you guys to think about any of that right now. I want you to focus on the fact that we're going to take this vocal. I'm going to bypass all of the delay, 1, 2, wrap, verb, fattening. And of course, I talk about this in another module, advanced effects, but I also talk about my routing and how I have my sends and also the vocals, right? And the vocal bus, vocal mix bus, etc. So go to that module if you want to understand more about the routing that I usually use to get these vocals sounding how they sound. Okay, so here we're gonna look at the delay, 1, 2, wrap, verb, fattening. We're gonna go to these guys at the bottom and we're holding down in Pro Tools, you can hold down Option Shift and that's due to selected. And I'm just gonna click the M to mute those. So we're not hearing any of this stuff right now. Okay, now we're gonna listen to this vocal and we're going to design this vocal to be sitting in the back, be more spacious, feel really big, so you don't lose the vocal. So we're going for depth, we're going for spacious, we're going for a vibe. Like every time you mix anything, you really want it to fit the vibe of the record. This is called Do the Most, right? So we want it to be big, we want it to feel legendary. Okay, so let's hear it just dry going to the vocal mix, and remember, we're not sending to any of this. And let's hear what we got.
Life is so good at performing as fuck. You know, fucking the phone. You know when I do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, but we gon' post some.
All right, so far I like the vocal. It sounds cool. It has some dynamic to it, but to make it a little bit like back and give it depth and spacious, spatial placement, what I really want to do is EQ out some of the mid-range just to tuck it back. That's kind of the first thing I would think about doing. In Pro Tools, you can hit tab and you can search your plugins, which is really nice. And I'm just going to use an REQ. So I'm just going R and then I'm just going to find, I think it's probably Renaissance EQ. Okay, so REQ, and we'll grab a 6-band just so we have some options here. I'm going to sweep out typical housekeeping stuff. I sweep out everything where there's nothing anyway. So like I could go probably all the way up to like 90 here. And then in this range, I want to start listening for what's going on in the mid-range. I think it's probably the 1 to 2K area that I kind of want to tuck back a little bit. So let's hear it.
Fuck, you know, fucking the phone. You know when I do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, but we gon' post some. Soon as I get the jet, you know we gon' blow some. You know when I do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean.
Okay, Okay, so I really like that. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to compress it a little bit just to keep it, you know, really balanced. But I love the R-Vox or the R compressor for this. And the Renaissance stuff, just to double check, if you ever want to see what's in the Golds bundle, I just have it open. And you can see it's $179, you know. I'm going to go in here and look what we got. Renaissance compressor. Okay, so we don't have the R-Vox in this. That's okay. I'm going to use the R-Comp, which is this Renaissance compressor. And then what I'm gonna do here is I'm just gonna kind of go like 3 to 1, 2.5 to 1. And I'm just gonna kind of sit it back in the track. I'm gonna tack pretty fast, and then I'm gonna release a little bit slower, but still really fast. And then opto, and I like the smooth compression on this. And let's just compress it so we don't lose anything, because he's going, you know when I do it, bitch, I do the most. You know, like, we don't want to lose any of that stuff in between. We want it all to be in one spot before we start bringing depth in. That's really, really important to understand. Don't start bringing in depth and sweetening before you actually have the vocal sitting where you want it to sit. Super important to hold it together and smooth it out. So 2.5 to 1 is good, and let's start getting this compressed, and we don't want to lose anything.
Fuck, you know, fucking the phone. You know when I do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, but we gon' post some. Soon as I get the jet, you know we gon' blow some. You know when I do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, but we gon' post some. Soon as I get the jet, you know we gon' blow some. Fuck, you know, fucking the phone. You know when I do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, but we gon' post some.
All right, now we're not losing anything that he's saying. We're like getting everything in there. And as you can see on the waveform, if I hit E, it's gonna bring it to the full view. You can see there's like parts where he's peaking out, and then there's like in between phrases where it's getting quieter, right? Like this phrase here, this isn't as loud as this, etc. And I can also like move in and out of the waveform, by hitting E. Right? It's just expanding the waveform. But I can also zoom in and out of the waveform view by doing that. And you can see kind of the lower stuff, right? And then the higher stuff. And what we're doing is we're compressing so the higher stuff comes down, and the lower stuff with the gain, when I bring up the gain, it's bringing that up. So it's just more, it's evening it out so we don't lose any phrasing. We don't lose any vocal parts. It's really important to a modern record, right? We want the vocal to stay put usually. Okay. And then the next thing I'm going to do on this vocal is start to shape after the compression with another EQ, or I could even use like a really great thing to use, like, because one thing I'm not liking in his voice is that, you know, like the really like pitchy, not really pitchy, but like, you know, 2K kind of area. So a really great plugin in the Waves bundle for this is the C4 compressor. And what this is it's basically just a multi-band compressor, right? And there's always like, you know, nice little presets you could start with. You know, if you want to go in here and say like, oh, I want clarity, or I want, you know, Aussie vocal chain. That's funny. Tamed guitars. Like tamed guitars actually might be a good starting point, right? But you could see here it's taking down some of the 16K. This is just a really, really awesome multi-band compressor. Like, I really like it. But sometimes what I'll do is I don't want to use certain bands. I'll just bypass them, right? Like, I'll bypass all these bands, and I'm just going to focus on just this middle kind of 2K, whiny, you know, screechy area that I'm really not liking in his vocal. And also because we're trying to make a spacious vocal, one that's big and kind of tucked back, you want to kind of tuck those frequencies back, the 1 to like 3K area, because that's what really makes you hear that a lot louder. Psychoacoustics, it's just our ears are much more tuned to that, and it's just because of millions of years of evolution. Babies cry in that frequency. That's why alarms and sirens are in that frequency, all that kind of stuff. So we want to be careful with that, because you don't want to piss off the listener with something like that. So here I'm just going to start to compress. You can see this is the range, attack, and release here, okay? Gain, range, attack, release. And then here you could see the bands, right? So mid 117, this is the crossover. So 117 hertz, 117 here. The mid is 817 here. And then the high is 3000, right? So I want to bring this up probably to like, you know, 1K area. 900 is good. And that's my crossover frequency. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to solo out this band so I can just really hear those frequencies that like as it pops out. That's what I'm listening for. And of course, I'm always going to give you guys those little auditorial references to hopefully, you know, help you get that a little bit better. I know it's kind of annoying, but that's what I'm listening for. And you got to tune your ear if you really want to become great at making records. Super important. So let's just solo the vocal and everything. Let's get everything soloed and let's listen to this range.
Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, well, fuck, we gon' post some. Soon as I get the check, you know ain't gon'.
Like I literally like had that dialed in just because my ears are so tuned to that frequency that, you know, like it's so obnoxious. And it also just pops out. It sticks out. So what we're going to do here is we're going to unsolo it and we're going to bring the threshold down so we start to compress it. And then the range, I think the range is probably pretty good. The range is telling you how many dB do you want to compress down. I'm going to keep it to like 5 or so. I don't know. Just depends. We're going to turn the attack pretty quick. I think that's good where it was. So like 3-4 milliseconds. And release is going to be pretty quick too. Like let's go pretty quick. Just to start. Now let's watch this band as it kind of grabs on just those certain parts.
Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, well, fuck, we gon' post some. Soon as I get the check, you know we gon' blow some. You know, gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, well, fuck, we gon' post some. Soon as I get the check, you know we gon' blow some. You know when I do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, well, fuck, we gon' post some. Soon as I get the check, you know we gon' blow some. Yeah. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, well, fuck, we gon' post some. Soon as I get the check, you know we gon' blow some. You know when I do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean.
Okay, so there you go. So now we're just kind of grabbing some of that. I'm just going to bypass it in and out and pay attention to those every time he goes you know, like the little punctuation parts. Pay attention to the frequencies there.
Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, but we gon' post some. Soon as I get the check, you know we gon' blow some. Gotta keep it wet, yeah. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, but we gon' post some. Soon as
nice and smooth, right? When I bypass it, you hear that vocal just stand out and it actually kind of moves up a little bit as well, just in the landscape of things, right? And I don't want that. I want it to be, remember, we're making a deep and spacious vocal. So that needs to be happening, okay? Now, the next thing I'm going to do, which I explained how I set this whole chain up in another module, which you should definitely check out, the advanced effects module, is the fattening, okay? And the fattening is going to kind of fatten out his vocal and make it bigger, taking up more of the center, okay? That's what this is. I'm going to unmute this. And this is just a doubler with a Q4, right? Which is giving me that 1K. And then an S1 imager kind of spreading it just a little bit more, just thickening it out. Now remember, this is a send, so I'm not like sending 100%. I'm sending just, you know, a little bit of that. And I'm going to adjust this. I'm going to show you what that's doing.
do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, but we gon' post some. Soon as I get the check, you know we gon' blow some. You know when I do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, but
so see how that like thickens out the vocal, it like makes it more important. And that's really a big part of making a record, right? So of course we want a spacious vocal. People usually think, hey, what I'm going to do is just throw a reverb on there, right? And that's going to make it spacious and it's going to tuck it back in the mix and it's just going to make all this stuff just disappear and I'm good, you know, I'll just put a reverb on it. That's kind of it's a good idea and it's important to have verb, and I do have the verb here, which I will send to. But the first thing I want to do is actually try to place it back a little bit. And the way we place it back, there's a lot of tools in this Waves Gold bundle. Let's take a look at some things we can use. We can use this H comp, or not H comp, but the H delay here. Okay, and we can use like a pre-delay that's going to give it some space back, which will tuck it back. We can also use gentle like flanging, which I don't really recommend. I would recommend more of like a chorus to tuck things back, kind of smear it a little bit. But I don't see that. So the flanger could work. The reverb, obviously, right? We can use the pre-delay, but also the tail of the reverb. True verb is going to work great for that. Yeah, those are really like the big ones for tucking things back spatially, and we're going to make that work no matter what. Also a doubler. A doubler can actually make things tuck back as well. But you got to be really subtle with the doubling, because what a doubler basically will do to tuck it back is it'll kind of like tuck the middle image back. And I'll show you a little trick right now with that, because I think that would be a really cool idea. Okay, so I'm going to open up the doubler and I'm going to go mono to stereo. I think I could probably just get away with the mono, but let's double check. First thing I want to do on the doubler is just open up a preset. It doesn't matter what it is, just anything having to do with vocals, right? So you go to load here and we're going to go to like Pensado vocal, there you go. Or let's just flip through some of this stuff. What we're looking for is we're looking for this, which it actually won't turn on unless it's stereo, it looks like. So here's what we'll do. We'll go back to the doubler. Sorry, I opened a mono version of the doubler, which is probably kind of weird. I don't know why you would want a mono doubler, but it makes sense, I guess, if you're looking for a certain effect. Okay, so here is what we're dealing with. This is the center image here, and you can bring this down, right? This is what they call the direct. And you want to make sure you're not panning, like see this, how it's panning? Make sure that's at 0. So I'm gonna go to 0 here, just make sure that's in the center, right? That's super important. And what you can do here is find, very subtle doubling. So don't even turn that on, take that down. We don't want any pitching. There's probably detuning in here. Yeah, you got detuning because it's a doubler, but take that to 0 because we're not going to tune on this. We're just going to go 0, okay? Reason being is we're not actually going to be using the doubling. We're going to be tucking the center more than doubling. And that's how we're going to just give it a little more space and depth, okay? And then here we go. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to bring it down a little bit. And you can also come to the direct here and just bring the gain down, okay? And all that's doing is turning down the center of the image. So I'm kind of using like a mid-side processor. So check this out.
Do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, but we gon' post on. Soon as I get the jet.
Okay, and you'll notice as I bring this center channel down, and I can also bring the sides up if I want to, on the doubling, but I really want very subtle on the sides so that I'm not really skewing, like bringing up this doubling effect, because it is detuned, it is pitching a little bit, which is fine. It's cool. Like I'll do less detuning. I'll do 5. I'll do 2 and 2 here. Okay, and let's try this. And we're just going to mess with the center and the sides here, okay? We're trying to tuck the vocal back in the mix is what we're trying to do.
Do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, but we gon' post some. Soon as I get the jet, you know we gon' blow some. You know when I do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, but we gon' post some. Soon as I get the jet, you know we gon' blow some. Yeah, do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, but we gon' post some. Soon as I get the jet, you know we gon' blow some. You know when I do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, but we gon' post some.
So see how like cool that is? That's just like one way of doing this, one way of tucking a vocal back, okay, and making a spacious vocal. It's in your face. It's got a lot of stuff going on. It's really like sounds really compressed. It was ran through outboard and stuff. But then you do this little trick. I took it down negative 0.8 dB in the middle and with a doubler. And now it's tucked back in the mix a little bit. And of course, you don't even need to do that much, right? Because now we're going to add reverb. So this is like the first step is like just tuck it back. You can use a pre-delay on a delay, or you can do this little trick, a little fancy trick for you. That's what this is all about, is showing you guys kind of the different ways of doing things with this gold bundle. Okay, so now there's my doubler. So now let's throw it to some reverb and let's see what we can do with some verb. Now this rap verb here is an altiverb, and I understand a lot of people don't have altiverb, and it's pretty expensive. Like it's like $600-700. So I'm going to bypass it and say FU altiverb, and we're going to turn on the R verb, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to get a plate here because I think that's what I was using. And we'll do a little dampening on the low ends, but mainly on the high end more. And then this, I think we can bring in some more of that low end, and this we can leave. I'm just kind of tweaking this to what I know works. And then, yeah, we'll leave it pretty long, like 4 seconds is long, and 100% wet. And let's just see what we got here as we throw some of this verb into it. Let's see what kind of space we can design here.
Do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, but we gon' post some. Soon as I get the jet, you know we gon' blow some. You know when I do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel do it, bitch, I do the most.
Okay, so the next thing I want to do with this reverb is I want to follow it up with an EQ, just to be able to smooth out the reverb in those peaky areas that I didn't like at first. Because if I already took them out of the vocal, or I'm trying to get them out of the vocal, why would I want them ringing out in the reverb, right? That's really important that you do your housekeeping on this stuff. So REQ is going to be something you reach to a lot. And I think it's a great EQ. It's really great. The update with the visualizer and everything is incredible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some housekeeping on the return here. And I'm going to smooth it out and take out some of this mid-range stuff that's splashing in the reverb. Because we want a dark, lush reverb for depth and spaciousness.
Do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, but we gon' post some. Soon as I get the jet, you know we gon' blow some. You know when I do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, but we gon' post some. Soon as I get the jet, you know we gon' blow some. Yeah, do it, bitch, I do the.
All right, and then one of my favorite things ever is to compress the reverb return, just to not only like smooth everything out, but also to bring the reverb up a little bit and kind of match it where the vocal is, which is really cool. And then with the R verb, remember, we can always do pre-delay a little bit longer. So like, let's try like a 30, I think like right around here is going to be good for this pre-delay. And let's dampen the high end a little bit more. And then, yeah, so we want a little bit of separation from the reverb, which is going to add more depth, right? Like that's what we're doing. We're doing deep and spacious vocals, okay? And they want to sound big and deep and warm, and not peaky and tiny and weird and thin and, screechy and whiny, right? Like nobody wants that, especially not on a rap record like this. I mean, you might if you're doing like an emo thing or something, right? Like a really emotional kind of track, but that's not what we're doing here. Okay, so REQ, I'm bumping up this area because I want it to darken and thicken. And now I think because of the pre-delay, we're going to get more of that dark thickness in there. And then the R comp is going to kind of bring everything up, all the low-level information.
Do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, but we gon' post some. Soon as I get the jet, you know we gon' blow some. You know when I do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, but we gon' post some. Soon as I get the jet, you know we gon' blow some. Yeah, do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, but we gon' post some. Soon as I get the jet, you know we gon' blow some. You know when I do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, but we gon' post some. Soon as I get the jet, you know we gon' blow some.
Sounding really cool now. Like it just sounds more deep. It sounds fatter, warmer, all that stuff. Just make sure though that you're not resonating too much when you start compressing, because it's going to bring that out even more. So I'm just going to tuck that EQ push a little bit back again. Because every time you compress, you're bringing that up more, right? Same thing here, like you're bringing this up more as well because you're gaining back up, right? Okay, so I just adjusted that. I think that's sounding really, really cool. And the last thing I want to do on this is I just want to spread the reverb just a little bit more to give myself more of that depth, right? To do this, I'm just going to use the PS22. There's a spreader here. And this is actually like a really good spreader. I think it works really well. I've seen other engineers use 2 of these back to back so that they can do different frequencies, like different centers, right? So maybe you have like the body of the vocal spread, and then you also have like the top of the vocal spread. So that's kind of a cool idea, and you can do that. But because this is a reverb, I'm really just looking to spread kind of that low warm stuff around that 300. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to like look at the presets here, and you just go to load, and then I can go like spread low frequency or spread male, vocal speech. Let's see, Dave Pensato, mono to wide, cool mode D. I like that. You know, let's kind of check some of this stuff out. I think the spatializer sounds like a pretty interesting idea here. And then you can see what it's doing. It's pushing all the frequencies all the way to the top to the bottom, right? So this is 32 hertz. This is 8,000 hertz, right? So now I can say how much I want to spread. I can spread 100%. I can spread over 100%. I'm going to keep it where it was, and the low frequency, and then you have the center here, and the density, and the tweak, and the sweeps. Like how many sweeps do you have, right? So this will give you how many sweeps. This has the most on this 10. So let's just see what this does to the reverb on and off, and we can just kind of listen to how the reverb fattens and widens out. That's kind of what I'm listening for.
Do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, but we gon' post some. Soon as I get the jet, you know we gon' blow some. You know when I do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. Soon as I get the jet, you know we gon' blow some. Yeah, do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, but we gon' post some.
Yeah, it's nice. It's like bringing all that singing out in the sides. And one thing I'm realizing about the reverb is I actually want it to be just a little bit brighter, just so we can hear it a little bit more in the ear. But also I think it needs to be longer, you know, just because I want it to like be rolling. That's how you get the spatial thing going. It's just like overlapping, folding on itself, right?
Do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, but we gon' post some. Soon as I get the jet, you know we gon' blow some. You know when I do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean.
Now that's a long reverb, right? So I think like probably around 6 or 7 is like really where I'm feeling it. And that's just so that you can have that space being filled up during this chorus. I mean, what else do you have? You have an 808, you have drums. You know, there's not really a whole lot going on in this chorus. It's all about the vocal, and the vocal's got to fill up that space. So that's kind of how you get that depth and that deep spatial vocal on a chorus, right? But there's one last thing that I do want to do before the doubler is I want to pop on a de-esser, and this is a great de-esser that actually comes with the vocal, you know, with the Waves Gold bundle. And again, you'll be getting all of these chains with this, with what you got going on. This de-esser built into Waves is incredible. So this Waves one is great. And the way I use this sometimes is I'll do 2 of them. So I'll have one de-essing like the 5K. In male vocals and in rap vocals, you're really looking at like 5K to 7K, and then another on the top, like around like 8 to 10. Okay. It's usually like 8 to 9.5 is what I find. So what I'll do here is I'll go to the side chain and I'll make it a, you know, so it's really singling out the frequency. And I think we're going to try like around where it's at, like 53, 55. And then we just listen to the side chain and we just listen to where the S's are and the sibilance that's bothering our ear. And then we're just going to take the threshold down and get it done. You can turn this from split to wide. And wide is just basically saying, hey, I'm going to grab a much wider band and frequency range. Or split is like, hey, let's hone in on our frequency a lot more. Okay, so let's try this out and let's see if we could de-ess it a little more. Because anything that you hear that's going to be bright or in your face too much is going to actually make it so the vocal's not as deep. Anything that we hear that's like up front, like if I'm talking directly into the mic, you hear the highs and the mids really well. But if I'm talking like this, right? If I'm talking like this, then you hear more of like the low end and the low mids. You don't hear the S's and all that stuff. So that's what we want to do, is we want to get rid of just things that you think like psychoacoustically, just in nature and in life. Like when a sound is directly at you, it's going to sound a lot brighter, right? Just because high frequencies are much more directional. That's why a tweeter's so small, right? Because it reproduces the high frequencies really well. And if you're not in front of the tweeter, you don't hear the high frequencies as well. But the sub, you can hear everywhere, right? You can feel it. So high frequencies, much more directional. Low frequencies, much more omnipresent, omnidirectional. So that's what we're going to do, is we're going to find the S's in here, and we're going to still kind of tuck this vocal back. It's like way better already. And then I'm actually going to use a second de-esser coming right after it that's going to get that top stuff that's a really top stuff, which I think is probably going to be 8 to 9K, but let's get into it.
Do it, bitch, I do.
So now I'm going to play the before and after, just so you can hear the big difference here. Making and creating a spatial vocal with depth, and bypassed all the plugins. I've bypassed the sends, and we're going to listen before and after, and then we're going to move on. You're going to go to the next module.
Life is so good at performance, fuck, fucking the phone. You know when I do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, but we gon' post some. Soon as I get.
Okay, and now let's play it after turning all the plugins right back on.
Life is so good at performance, fuck, fucking the phone. You know when I do it, bitch, I do the most. Gotta keep it wet, yeah, I'm talking ocean. You don't feel it yet, but we gon' post some. Soon as I get the jet, you know we gon' blow some. You know when I do it, bitch, I do the most.
Right, and just a couple adjustments. You can make it however you like it. Maybe you don't like the reverb as long or whatever, but this channel strip will be included with your Mix on a Budget series, right? So pretty cool. And hopefully you enjoyed this module and you learned a lot about creating depth, getting the vocal to tuck back into the mix and make a spatial, big vocal that doesn't sound like it's going to cut your head off. Have fun with the other modules. Thanks for tuning in.